Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education. What is going on, guys? Happy Saturday. This is recorded on a Saturday, which is great. Great Saturday night, conversation coming at you. Before we get started, before we jump into the episode, guys, let's get the administrative stuff out of the way. So if you enjoy the podcast, if you get encouraged, entertained through this, do us a huge favor, drop a like below. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below, and then subscribe. And most importantly, share with a friend. It's the only way that the show grows. It's the only way that we can continue to get the word out there and help people. So do yourself and do somebody else a favor and share with a friend. So for today, super excited about this because we have a guy that's extremely intelligent that a lot of people look to for advice and look to for kind of the in-depth knowledge that maybe we'll touch on and maybe we won't because, anyways, Jake Tuura, man, what's going on?
Well, we have to touch on it because it's all that I think about. It's all that's in my brain. So,
for those of you that don't know, Jake, he is so well educated, I guess you could say, on tendons, tendon adaptations, and everything from that. So if you don't know Jake and you're curious about that, like he's kind of the guy with tendons, and there's really nobody else talking about this stuff.
Yeah, because who cares? I mean, if you don't have tendon pain, you're not going to worry about it. It's like the tendon, like muscle is very cool. The central nervous system is very cool, but it's like, unless you have a tendon pain, you shouldn't really be concerned about tendons. They're going to kind of take care of themselves, and you're going to be able to perform in your sports. And if you're not meant to be a good, the term elastic, someone who uses their tendons a lot. If you're not really like that, because you're a bigger guy like me, a wider guy, then it's like you're going to just be a different athlete anyways. But yeah, the tendons, for me, dude, that's really all that I have. That's kind of just been something that's been given to me because 2 years ago, I did not care one bit about tendons and I really knew nothing. And why should I know anything? Because it just doesn't matter unless you have a pain. So like I had jumper's knee and I went through that. And now, all I really want to do is understand tendons better because, I went through undergrad and I went through my master's and I'm like, what did I even learn with tendons? There was nothing at all. I think they'd say like they would say they're a strong spring or they're like an elastic rubber band, and it's like, okay, that's it, and then we're done. We're on to talk about something else. I guess we'll get into some more things as we go, but that's kind of what I enjoy focusing on because there's no competition because no one has broached the topic of tendons, at least in the strength and conditioning world. Probably even, I don't know. I didn't go through PT, so I can't really speak for that. PT school, I never got my doctorate of PT, but I went through physical therapy multiple times for my patellar tendon, and it seemed like not very effective. Yeah.
It's really funny you say that. A couple of things, like we go out and we get our master's degree, and then you're like, well, what did I really learn? And you're like, oh, cool, I learned about the Krebs cycle, which I'm never really going to talk to anybody about ever again, and let alone athletes, let alone other coaches. It's like, okay, cool, like I learned the smallest amount about energy system development. Like the only thing that you really learn is like all the energy systems work together at the same time. And you're like, okay, and then you have these guidelines on like what energy system is what, and then it's like programming. You're like, the hell is that, right? Like go do all these internships and stuff, and then let alone like working with the athletes, communicate all this other stuff. And then the tendon, right? Like you don't even talk about the tendon. We're just like, yeah, it's, there's bones, there's muscles, there's tendons, and there you go. Like, good luck, right? It's just so glossed over, and then there's no actual like practical application, let alone no understanding. So if there's no understanding, there can't be any practical application on like a deep level. And I feel like that's kind of like across the board on a lot of things. So then you go do these internships where you're supposed to actually learn, actually implement, and actually understand things. But a lot of times, sometimes it's just the same thing over and over again,
Yeah, it's dude, it's like tendons. So people listen.
So hang on. Before we get into this, let's have them understand like why you're so fascinated by tendons. And I think you said something earlier that many people might just gloss over, which is if you don't have a tendon issue, like you really shouldn't worry about it, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
and
kind of like
it's gonna take care of itself. Like so,
yeah, 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 yeah.
there's many different. I'm writing this tendon book, which I've been writing now for like 2 years, and have recently only been able to formulate a table of contents that makes sense.
Nice.
So I think the benefit for me, or the benefit for everyone else, is like I'm a meathead myself, and like I need to,
Mm,
if I'm going to simplify it, dumb it down, I have to understand it well enough, which means I I need to read every piece of research. And actually, a lot of the research is just going to be repeating itself. But what you find is like different syntax. You find the different vernacular they use to explain something, which I find fascinating. And it helps me because I'm more of a visual learner. So when they can use, when they say maybe a spring or a rubber band or a stiff connector or something like that, I'm like, okay, it kind of paints this picture. I wish I could think of some of the better, more creative terms they use, but I can't think of them right now. Sure. But so there's a bunch of different, like theories, concepts, different illustrations that have been painted for tendons. Jill Cook did a lot of that. Craig Purdom, Ebony Rio, some of the people back in the day. But one of them was the tendinopathy continuum, where you take a tendon that's healthy and it's completely fine, and then you get a reactive tendon. You just done too much load for the tendon, and it gets kind of pissed off, and it gets kind of red, and it gets kind of hot, and you're unhappy. And how do you deal with the reactive tendon? You just, what any person does, you rest a little bit. You can rest a little bit. You could actually put ice on it because you probably haven't damaged the collagens, which within the fascicles. You probably just kind of like cause this accumulation of fluid, which I don't know if ice can do anything for that. Actually, anti-inflammatories can help get rid of some of that fluid. So you just kind of piss it off, and if you rest, it goes away. So most people with tendon pains, they've experienced tendon, but probably mostly all athletes have experienced a tendon pain. And what do? They rest and it goes away. So you never need to understand anything else about tendons. You're good. You usually figure yourself out. It's the people who get the tendon pain and they might not rest. They might keep pushing, or they might try the rest and it doesn't really work and it just sticks around and it sticks around. That's where you need to have a little better understanding. And that's probably where it's gone from reactive to degenerative. That's at least what they say in the research, where you've actually tapped into the collagens. It's no longer just about the fluid within the tendon. The fluid within the tendon, it's recycled all the time. It's very fast to react to what's going on. Whereas the collagens react slowly. You need to like overload quite a bit chronically to tap into the collagens. And you'll see damage. You'll see damage to collagens by just a lot of training, and you also see it with aging. So it's basically like as you get older, you damage more collagens. As you train more, you damage more collagens. They're kind of the same thing, actually. So it's like what's weird about strength and conditioning is all the concepts we have where we say, let's use this volume of work, or let's use this dose of work. And it's like, so we can say like, well, this has this effect on the central nervous system and it has this effect on the muscles. But I'm looking at it, I'm like, dude, how do you know you're not doing irreversible damage to your tendons? How do you not know? You know, and I don't think it's worth fear mongering about. But I think hopefully in the future you could say, for this given athlete, doing 100 max effort jumps in a week is going to lead to downstream negative effects. Who knows? But you will usually see the tendon issues in the older athletes, like the ruptures, the like Achilles, especially. Like you see Achilles ruptures in NBA, you hardly ever see them in college. And I just visited one of these old basketball girls I used to train, and we were just chatting, but there was an old guy at Youngstown who tore his Achilles. I think it was his 6th year, and they had a guy at their university tear his Achilles. I think he was also a 6th year. So it's like you usually don't see the Achilles tears in a guy who's coming fresh out of high school. You usually don't see them in high school. You see them as people get older. And what exactly is going on? I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's like you're going to have damage to the collagens in the first place before you're going to end up rupturing it anyways. You're going to have pathology existing, and you're more likely to have pathology or structural abnormalities within the tendon if you train a ton over your life and if you're an older person. So it's basically like tendon damage is seen as you age, and tendon damage is seen as you train a lot. Can we figure out the exact point? I don't know. Is this a reason why as you get older and older, people usually they end up rupturing a tendon, or they end up just kind of stopping sport because their tendon doesn't work as well.
Sure.
You know, I don't know. Like muscles continue working. They turn over fast. They continue working for a long time. Your central nervous system has these adaptations that continue. Is one of the things that are holding people back as they age, as they get to become an older athlete. Is one of the things holding them back the tendon function. I mean, there's a lot of different mechanisms for it. It could be, but there's probably also like 1,000 other things. But it's interesting for me. It's interesting for me to think about. And for me, I enjoy doing the super deep dive into tendons. But again, coaches should care, physical therapists should care, doctors should care. But if you're an athlete, you don't need to understand the tendon hierarchy. It's like, hey, if your tendon hurts, rest it a little bit, and then you're good to go. Like but this is me. I'm a laissez-faire guy. I'm just so hands off where it's like, just whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it. And if you got some serious roadblock to doing what you want to do, then we can get some intervention. But until then, just go and do what you need to do, and then let nature take care of it. If something's hurting, you rest a little bit. If the rest ain't working, then consult a professional, someone who knows more about it to help you. You know.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a lot of questions off of that, and let me just kind of ask a couple of them, and you can pick and choose when you want to answer, how you want to answer, whatever the case may be. But okay, the reason why people, whether they're older in their athletic career or just older in general, typically rupture an Achilles is primarily what we see, right? And you see this both in basketball and actually in the NFL too. There's actually a lot of Achilles ruptures in the NFL. Is it by nature of a load monitoring or the inability to have that? Because a lot of times like tendon stuff is very reactionary, right? Like nobody, and like we've already said this, like if it doesn't bother you, like you're not going to really like think about it or focus on it. But if it does start to bother you, because you're not just going to randomly get an Achilles rupture, like there's going to be some stuff leading up to that you're like, hey, it's like something's not right. I'm feeling this, or, you know, it's just different. And then secondly, do you think that's why a lot of people have been supplementing with collagen, and collagen is becoming more and more popular? And should they do that, I guess, especially if you're an older athlete? Because, you know, if that's what's happening, like, should we start to learn how to either make more collagen, strengthen the collagen, or get there to the point where the tendon is still functional? Does that kind of make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So let me answer the first is, so what's weird, actually, now we're going to make it even contradictory.
Yes.
Here's the thing, man. I think for myself, a lot of things I say are contradictory. I think a lot of people who are experts in a certain field, they say things that are very contradictory. And if you don't really, if you're really knowledgeable about some subject area, you're going to be contradictory. It's just the way things are. But we look at it as a bad thing, and it's like this guy's contradicting himself. He said this yesterday, and I'm saying this today, or he said this, and so it's like, you know what? That's just the way it is. And the contradiction with the tendon Achilles rupture or any tendon rupture is, I forget the exact number, but most people who rupture their tendons actually don't have pain beforehand. They don't have a sign. They don't have they don't have a sign that they're going. They don't have a sign that they're going to rupture their tendon. So the idea then is that pain is protective, because if you're going and playing sport and it hurts, it actually kind of stops you from playing sport, and then you're like probably not going to rupture the thing because you're not loading a tissue that's compromised. But the weird thing is, man, like a tissue that's compromised. I love looking at these pro dunkers. I've had like a number of podcasts with pro dunkers just to get their story. And being a dunker myself, I can talk for an hour with those guys without anything planned, because it's like, what kind of shoes do you wear? What's your warm up like? What kind of how the surfaces affect you? There's all these little small things. What do you do to get hand speed? How do you hold the ball? You know, all these little small things with dunking that you would only know by actually going out and dunking. But the thing is, it's called the jumper's knee paradox, where the people who jump the highest have the worst looking patellar tendons on scanning, on imaging. So if you are a very explosive, like you could probably put that to Achilles, someone who's an explosive athlete, someone who's very fast, they probably have a really ugly looking tendon. They probably have a lot of damage within their tendon. If you're a high jumper, you probably have a really ugly looking patellar tendon on scanning. It doesn't mean you have pain, because the pathology is not predictive of pain. It could be predictive of a rupture if you continue competing. And most people just kind of stop as they get older. They stop jumping and they stop sprinting as fast as they can. So you're not going to rupture your tendon because you're not really loading it in the way that you could those are the ways that you could rupture it. So that kind of goes away. So that's the weird thing with rupture, man, is like when you have it, if someone just has a tendinopathy, a tendon pain, you can kind of listen to your body, get on a loading program or rest it, just kind of figure it out as you go. But when it comes to rupture, it's like, dude, I don't know why they happen. But the idea is that they do have pathology before. They do have an ugly looking tendon before they go on to rupture it. Now, could that just be aging? Because everyone who ages is going to have an ugly looking tendon. Everyone who trains hard is going to have an ugly looking tendon. I don't know. But then when we get to collagen, because, and that's a good, I mean, it's actually an awful question, but I'm going to say it's a good question. Because
okay.
It's a
popular thing. It's a popular
question.
You know.
It's an awful question because we go, like, people will say, maybe this is from like Keith Barr. Keith Barr does have that little bit of research where it's like they gave those people collagen supplementation. Then I think they did a jumping rope, and then they looked at their Achilles and they saw that it was actually incorporated in there. So people are like celebrating, like, hey, we got collagen synthesis. But yeah, I don't think you're really having that effect, dude. You got to look at it this way. It's like let's take the so. You have the whole tendon, and the whole tendon. Then as you go down levels, the tendon hierarchy. People should look at the tendon hierarchy photo. I've looked at hundreds of tendon hierarchy photos, and I'm still understanding the tendon hierarchy because it's just the way the tissue is built. You have a whole tendon, and then it's separated into different fascicles. Like they looked at a rat. Dude, I was trying to figure out how many fascicles are in a tendon. I can't find the answer. I found it in a rat. They did a rat tail. And they found that the rat tail can have 1 to 12 fascicles. So 1 to 12 fascicles, it kind of depends. I don't know what it depends on. I'm looking at the patellar tendon and I'm like, how many fascicles are in the patellar tendon? I'm like, is it like 80? Is it 100? In the Achilles tendon, is it 80? Is it 100? Something other. Is that the number of fascicles? So they're all individual components of the tendon, the fascicle, and then the fascicle breaks down into fibrils, and the fibrils breaks down into subfibril, microfibril, and then finally collagen. Collagen's way down there. Like if you look at the triple helix of collagen, you'd have millions of those within your tendon. So it's like, you're probably breaking those all the time by just regular activity throughout the day, loading throughout your life. And then how do we know you consume this thing? It goes in your gut and then it gets incorporated into the tendon. I don't know if that's even happening. And you have different pools of collagen too. How I said you have the tendon, it goes into the fascicle, and then it goes into the fibrils, and you have big fibrils and you have small fibrils. And the thing with aging and training is aging and training breaks the big fibrils and makes you have more small fibrils. So just the nature of life, you're breaking the fibrils, they're turning into smaller ones. And one of the ideas is the smaller ones also just recycle faster. So like there used to be this idea with the tendon world that the collagen within the tendon, so if we say collagen, that's going to be the collagen within the fibrils, within the fascicles, within the tendon. So going way down is like the collagen within the tendon does not turn over after 17. This was like old research by Hannemeyer, where they did some they looked at the atomic bombs, they figured out the concentrations within the environment, they looked at people's Achilles tendons, and they saw that it's not turning over past the age of 17. So they said, by the time you're 17, your tendon is built, and it's really not doing much afterwards. So people had that idea, and then they say, you take that idea, and then you say, if you supplement collagen, it's not doing anything. It's not doing anything at all because your tendon is done. Sure. But then Hannemeyer had another study where they found people who had tendinopathy had an accelerated rate of turnover within their tendon, within the collagen within their tendon. So you could take someone with a healthy tendon, completely healthy tendon, once they're 17, it's probably not doing much. But then you take someone who develops a tendon pain, and this just makes logical sense. The body knows that there's compromised tissue, so what is it going to do? It's going to accelerate the processes within that area. So it accelerates the breakdown, the synthesis and the breakdown of collagen within your tendon, and then you're good to go. There was another idea that they've looked at the circadian rhythms, and they saw that the large fibrils are pretty static throughout a person's life, but the very small fibrils are the ones that are broken down and renewed every single day. So it's like this very small percentage of your tendon is broken down and renewed every single day. So it's like there's so many different areas within, when we talk about collagen, that some of the collagen probably isn't doing much. Some of the collagen is being recycled every single day. Keith Barr stuff, where you consume collagen and then you exercise and it gets incorporated into the tendon. like you might be getting all this stuff is happening, but what does it necessarily mean for pain or for someone with a rupture, dude? I don't have any idea, because it's not like
Sure.
it's not like taking you take collagen protein. It's like taking Advil for your tendon pain. That's not how it happens, you know. And you're getting so far down into the structure, and it's like I just don't know, man. And I bet you there are also cases of tendon pain where they don't even have pathology. I bet you that exists too, man. The pain is so complex. But the whole thing with like, should I take a collagen protein for my tendon pain? I've got that question so many times, and it's like, I hope you're not taking it and just expecting it's going to relieve your tendon pain. The placebo effect does exist, but it's like, I don't really think that's going to be happening. There's many other factors, but I'm sure someone has done it. I'm sure someone out there has had tendon pain for a long time. They started taking collagen protein and their pain's gone. You know, was it that they incorporated the collagen within their tendon, or was it that you just got a placebo effect? I don't know.
Yeah, and then they go and they tell people how amazing collagen is and that collagen solves our problems. So
that's the thing. It's like the tendon, dude. Pain rehab, probably performance. It is like all of it is individual. It's so individual where you need to. I try to. So I've given a template for here are the kind of the guidelines you should follow. But you need to go take this, and you need to individualize this based on yourself. And dude, tendon pain is just debilitating. The one thing that you want to do, for me, I had jumper's knee for 3 years. The one thing I wanted to do is dunk basketballs. I could not dunk basketballs. It's the only thing in my life I wanted to do, and I couldn't do it. So it really affects your headspace too. Like I just became depressed, tired. The one thing that you want to do, you can't do. So for some reason, you're just like, your whole life is just living under a dark cloud. But slowly, man, it's like slowly chip away, and then some magic ends up happening, and you figured it out, and you're good to go. And I'm like, for myself, dude, I could dunk every single day now. I'm fine. Until one of these days, I might blow my patellar tendon. I might rupture my patellar tendon. I don't know. It might be coming. I don't know.
So let me try and make a comparison here and see if the comparison is similar. Okay, so what you're saying with tendons and the structure of the tendons and the hierarchy of the tendons is actually quite similar. And what I mean by that is similar to muscle hierarchy, right? So we have, the larger muscles, and then they break down to the fascicles, and they break down smaller to the sarcomere, right? And then we can see like the actual sliding filament theory. Not that it goes that deep, or maybe it goes even deeper, but the point that I'm making is the structure of it is relatively the same, where we have the tendon, we have the fascicles, and then we have, smaller units of that make it up, right? And then another question I had with that structure, do you think or is there any potential thought process of, with the muscles, we have like the size principle, right? So in some activities, and this is, getting into the muscle fiber types, obviously, but we have the size principle where, if I'm just walking, I'm only using, type 1 fibers. But then when I'm sprinting, I'm using, type 2 fibers. Like, are you finding similar stuff with tendons where it's like, we may not have like names for them, at the moment, right? But certain activities only, activate, whatever, like certain components of the tendon, whereas like a dunk, a jump, a sprint, a bound, or something that's very tendon driven, activates all of it? Or is it more of like the, all or none principle, where like the tendon is working, obviously it's all working, but like, it's working 100% or it's not working at all. And when I say working, I don't, what I'm saying is like, does that kind of make sense? Those are two questions that I had like off the front.
Yeah. So, the difference is, the structures are the same. The difference is it's weird. It's still the sliding filament theory. It's called a theory. It's like, we still don't know. We still don't know this is happening. And then you have the compression expansion people that would say like, it's just about fluid flow of like the muscles compressing and then expanding, compressing, expanding. But anyways, the difference is that the muscle is the contractile tissue, so it is able to contracting, and the tendon is not. The tendon is not controlled by the brain. Does not control the tendon. The tendon is just this stupid, I would say, piece of meat, but it's not even a piece of meat, because it's like you're not gonna cut up a deer and then eat the tendon. It's like it's not a tasty tissue. It's like, but anyways, it's just this.
Yeah.
I would love to use a stupid piece of meat, but I can't because the meat is the muscle. So it's like it's just this stupid tissue that doesn't like it just responds to the feedback of
Yep.
what's happening at the bone or the feedback of what's coming from the muscle. So it's like the size that wouldn't really the size principle it wouldn't really exist. The graph you would have to look at would be the stress and the strain curve. So like if you look at the tendon kind of breaks down, and if you look at a tendon that's relaxed, so the muscle's not contracting, and it's not the bones are not in a position where the tendon would be stretched. So actually, you could get, and this is kind of a thought I've had is like we say for the Achilles tendon to adapt the Achilles tendon. To just get load through the Achilles tendon, you have to get on a calf raise and do a calf raise exercise. You know, you'd have to, so you go as heavy as possible to get a lot of strain, to get a lot of deformation on the tendon, because the tendon, you want to deform it. But actually, dude, if the tendon is just this tissue that is responding to whatever the muscle's doing or responding to the position of the bones, could you just go into a really deep calf stretch and get the stretch on the tendon? Like you could, it would actually get a stretch on the tendon. Now, I don't know if that would be beneficial because now there's this idea of compression. You're actually like mashing your tendon against the bones and you're mashing your tendons against all this other type of tissues when you get into a deep stretch like that. So it's like you're stretching the thing. You're probably getting some adaptation with the tendon because the individual fibrils, we go from the tendon fascicle into fibrils. The fibrils have a crimp. So like they're kind of bent if they're rested. The fibrils are crimped up. There's no stress going through them. They're actually like kind of relaxed. Like maybe you could think of like the analogy might be like a spring that is just kind of relaxed. You know, it would just kind of be sitting there. But then if you stretch it out, the whole thing gets straighter and straighter. You know, so I look at a kind of, you could maybe look at a fibril like that, where when it's relaxed, it's all bent up and there's no stress going through it. But then as you start to pull on it, and we usually pull on it with muscle activation, like say a heavy strength exercise or an isometric, with as much weight as possible on a calf raise. You're going to activate the calf muscle to pull on the Achilles tendon as hard as possible. You could get that, or I'm thinking you could just go into a super deep calf stretch. I think that you might be getting the same adaptation because all you're getting is the pull on the crimp is going away. And then you could also get that by just doing like a pogo hop, jump as high as you can. So just jump as high as you can, and you're going to get rid of the crimp, and you're going to get the linear pull. So with the tendons, it's not like the size principle, or like you need to activate as much motor units as possible as it would be with a muscle. With a tendon, all it would be is let's get rid of the crimp by pulling on the tendon, and then once you pull on the tendon, you're kind of just like pulling on the thing as hard as possible. And if you pull on it too much, now you're going to start breaking the fibrils. Yeah, you're going to start actually getting breakage of. And the thing with the fibrils is like dude, this is like I forget the exact number, but if you look at the strand of a hair would be like you can see put a strand of hair on a table and you can look at it. It's tiny. You can see the diameter, but the diameter of a tendon fibril, I forget the exact number, but it's like let's just say 100 to like 1,000 times smaller than that of a hair. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about like looking at a microscope that's 100 times, 1,000 times zoomed in, maybe even more than that. So it's like these are the components we're talking about that are crimped up and then they get pulled. And they've tried to trace these. So why I say that is because they tried to trace them through the tendon. And there's some research, quite a bit of research that is like, they never see the end. They never see the end of the tendon fibril because they think it runs all the way from the muscle to the bone. So you could think of like your patellar tendon, which let's just patellar quad tendon is like, it starts at the quadriceps and it runs all the way through down to the tibia. And a lot of the fibrils are like that. But again, go back to aging and training, you get breaking of fibrils. And when they break, they can kind of branch off. They can attach to other ones. So you probably, as you get older and older, you probably have a lot of these fibrils that are discontinuous and now they're actually attaching to one another. And the weird thing with the patellar tendon, the Achilles tendon, it just, the three different calf heads, they all form the Achilles tendon and then those go into the calcaneus. The weird thing with the patellar tendon is you have the patellar tendon that runs from the kneecap. So it runs from the quadriceps down to the patella, down to the tibia. But then you also have a patellar ligament, which starts at the patella kneecap and just goes to the tibia. So it's like that's not attached to a muscle, you know, it's not attached to a muscle. It's just, they're just a lot shorter. Yeah. But I think the difference with a ligament and a tendon is a tendon has those like really well organized fibrils that kind of run linear. They kind of run in that path of force, whereas a ligament is more kind of, the fibrils are kind of more messed up. And messed up, but not linear. They're just like kind of jumbled, but they find a way to connect to make it strong. And I think the thing with the patellar ligament is that it actually is built more like a tendon. So, dude, I don't know why the human body would decide to do something like that. But anyways, that's kind of how it is.
Okay, it's I mean, you're kind of making these discoveries, right? Because you're really like the only one studying and then publicizing tendon research, and you're not really like researching, you're reading research, but you're the one that's kind of making it known, if that makes sense, right? Which is really interesting. A question that I have, if we stay on the Achilles for a little bit, because I know you're really also passionate about the patellar tendon and the quad tendon, because, you know, jumping wise, like that's really important also. And so looking at the Achilles, a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong here, please, but a lot of times when you see like an Achilles tear or a rupture, right, is in a bent knee position when somebody's in the process of accelerating, right? Or they say in a false step, right? Like they're taking that step back, or their shin is getting closer to the ground and they're in that acceleration component. The question that I have then is, do we think that the speed of it plays a role? And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm, or the amount of force that's produced in such a short period of time, like as in sprinting, is that a big component to potential ruptures, even though like we may not have definite answers? Because a lot of times, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't see somebody rupture an Achilles when they're jumping just vertically, right? A lot of times you see them when they're in the acceleration profile, and that foot is really behind the hip, whether they're playing ball, whether they're sprinting, whatever the case may be. Like, is speed a factor, you know, kind of in that component with the Achilles specifically?
Yeah.
Or don't we know? Or
yeah. So like, I mean, dude,
does that make sense to you though?
Yeah. So like you're more likely to rupture a tendon whenever you have a ton of like a ton of force going through. Maybe is force the right term? I don't know. Just a bunch of energy happening in that moment. But if someone has a really bad tendon, so I was reading this piece of research, this guy had a total knee replacement and he was getting up off the toilet and he ruptured his patellar tendon. Getting up off the toilet, you know, he ruptured his patellar tendon. Wow. So it's like, this guy had serious, because sometimes, I don't know if they do that in all cases, but they total knee replacement, keep the patellar tendon. I don't know too much about total knee replacement. I think it's just, maybe that was a case.
My dad had two total knee replacements.
So do they keep the patella and patellar tendon? I don't know. I think
I don't know the specifics of it.
Yeah. Anyways, this guy still had them, and so because you could just have severe degeneration, severe compromise with the tendon. So someone could be stepping off a curb and rupture their Achilles tendon. It could happen. They would have to be like very, very unhealthy, something like that. But anyways, we're talking usually like basketball player, football player, anyone, I guess, that competes in an explosive sport. And I would say this though, as you said, when the shin is dropping, you usually see that. I think the shin is not dropping. So the knee is actually, so they're stepping back, but their knee is actually more extended. Their knee is like, so they're, you know, this is kind of what I'm saying. This is kind of what I'm saying though. It's like, usually that happens and they want to go forward, so their shin is dropping. But for some reason, their shin isn't really dropping. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're tired, and when you're tired, you don't want to get in low positions. I don't know. They could actually slip behind them, and then that could, you know, that's happened too.
Yeah.
You could have Kevin Durant. I think he had a calf injury beforehand, and then that happened. You know,
So
like to blame the movement. So my friend Darian Barr, one of the smartest dudes in biomechanics, and a lot of people disagree and don't like him because I separate in my brain the objective and subjective, the science and the art. And Darian Barr is so artful. He has such a creative mind. And I think that's why people don't like it, because when you get into strength and conditioning, we're so objective minded and so scientific minded that when you put any form of art into it, we're like, no, wrong, objectively wrong. And it's like, well, what is objectively wrong? Come on. So
you don't fit in this box, right? Yeah.
Like what do you know objectively? It's like the sliding filament theory, dude. It's still a theory. Or like the cloud, the sky is blue. It's like, is that objectively true? You know, it's our perception. So Darian. So anyways, Darian, I kind of have these questions with him. He doesn't like to talk about injuries too much, but he's just like, Sometimes it just happens. Something short circuited. The muscle,
Sure, sure.
maybe the calf muscle should have engaged, and it did not engage for some reason. And boom, there goes
Mm.
the Achilles, and now the rest of your athletic career might be compromised for that one split,
For real though, yeah.
split moment. Because you got to think too, this guy, he's done a full step 1,000, a million times, and he's never ruptured his Achilles. Now he ruptured his Achilles. There's so
Right.
many different factors. You could even, dude, even health plays a big role because when they
Yeah.
did the NFL, they had research on the NFL lockouts. I don't even remember when that happened. They're like, don't remember much about that. But they took significant time off, then they come back. When they came back after that time off, they had a huge number of Achilles ruptures.
Yep.
And
Yep.
if you could look down at the structure level. Keith Barr's kind of talked about that, where the collagen is cross-linked, where to make it strong, it gets cross-linked. So the collagen triple helix is cross-linked to another triple helix, and you get cross-link. The structure gets very strong, but you could actually get cross-links that are sugar cross-links. And the thought is that people with diabetes have sugar cross-links. People that have chronically elevated blood sugar get cross-links, and those are more brittle. Those are not as strong cross-links. So if you have someone who's very unhealthy, chronically elevated blood sugar, maybe what's happening, one of the parts is they're getting more sugar cross-links. Their tendon is more brittle. You might look at it might have like similar, a similar look, similar properties, but it's more brittle because the cross-links are no longer, they say, enzymatic cross-links and non-enzymatic. They're more sugar cross-links, which are more brittle, easier to break, and maybe that's why in the NFL lockout you had more Achilles. I don't know, because again, when that Achilles does happen, for some reason the body's not doing what it's supposed to do. The muscle's not doing what it's supposed to do. So it could be, I don't know what it could be, man. Could it be a fatigue thing? Could it be just something? But to try to speculate on what is the cause of the Achilles rupture in the moment that it happens, I have no clue. There's just speculations.
Yeah, that's why it's so fascinating, right? Because we don't know, right? And like trying to find the reason or the potential reasons or the factors that come into play. I think it's so multifactorial. I kind of almost think it's like fatigue a little bit. And what I mean by that is like fatigue is so multifactorial that we can't put our thumb on one thing, right? Like, did you get a good night's sleep last night? Yes. Well, what about the 6 nights before that? No. Okay. Well, like, does that play like there's so much residual, I want to say, with it too. And it's just like, we can't put our thumb on that one thing or the multitude of one things that constitutes like, okay, if we do these things, like, here's the strengthening, here's the negative side of it. And this is the effect, for 24, 48, 72, a week, a month, a year. Like it just appears to be so multifactorial. And I also think that's probably why so many people aren't diving into it, because it's probably caused you a lot of headaches, and you're probably like, I'm reading all this stuff and I have no clue about any of it. And not only do I have no clue about it, but it's just not making sense. Like there's no path to be like, oh, that makes sense. Or this is what they've said before. So that, like it's just like everywhere. Does that kind of like, it's just all over the place. It's sporadic. Almost.
Yeah, it's well, I don't really go into the ruptures too much because I'm kind of disinterested. Because again, dude, I'm only interested in tendons, patellar tendons, because I had for 3 years and I just wanted to dunk and I couldn't dunk, so it caused me a lot of pain in my life. It was the same. So I tell people, like, I have basically 3 things in my life with performance. Was like I was a tiny, I was small in high school. I was insecure about how small I was, so I figured out how to get big. I figured out how to get big naturally. I never took anything. I gained 40 pounds of muscle in college. So I'm big now. And it's like, I figured out how to get big, and I wanted to figure out how to get big without losing athleticism. So I came out with hypertrophy clusters. And then it was like, okay, I want to be able to dunk now, and then I released vertical jump protocol. And then it was like the patellar tendon just caused me pain for years. And so those are my things. And I'm like, that's really my only thing. Rupture, I've never experienced rupture. Why would I care? Achilles, ACL tear, I've never experienced like ACL tear. I can give you some information, but I'm not that passionate, and I'm not going to be that well versed because I just do not care, and I can't care. And if someone tells me I need to be more well rounded, dude, just get out of here. I'm patellar tendon. People, dude, I'm traveling now, and people are like, what are you here for? And I'm like, well, I'm writing a book, and it's like, what's a book? It's like patellar tendon. People would be like, what? You write a book on a patellar tendon?
Yeah.
It would be like, there's a market for patellar tendon. Yeah, there's a freaking market for patellar tendon. But
you'd be amazed. Yeah.
But dude, the weird thing with the ruptures is, so when we talk about, you go in the weight room, and actually, Man, I think most of these, I would look at, man, I look at rehab. I've seen a lot of rehabs, working in
Sure.
college athletics, seen a lot of rehabs, and it's like we we look down on what happens in the training room because we say it's so low stimulus. You know, it's like very low, all this low
Mm,
stimulus for months, and then they do a bit of change of direction work and a bit of XL decel, and you see the athletes going like 70%, and then you just throw them back into the wolves. You know, go back to sport, and for you know what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah,
That's what we do, but it
yep,
works, man. It works a lot of times. It works, and I'm like, uh, you think you're doing all these things in the rehab plan, and it's really graded, and it's really you're increasing your exposures. But dude, always it's like then you got to reach a point where you get thrown back into the wolves because once you put a basketball in a basketball player's hands, they're going to be sprinting twice as fast as they would in that little isolated sprint you did with the physical therapist telling them to sprint fast, or the AT or physical therapist who the
yep,
athlete looks at them as like a completely different person than any athlete or anyone that could actually push them. So it's like then you get reach a point, throw them back into the
yep.
wolves, and let's go train. It's like the body can actually usually takes care of things pretty well. So I want to preface what I'm
Sure.
about to say by saying that the body usually figures things out. But when we look at the Achilles tear, and then we might say, let's do Achilles tear prehab. You know, let's do some preventative things. And we usually go
Yep.
to like, let's strengthen the muscle. You know, it's like do calf raise isos or do calf raises because a stronger muscle is better for the tendon. But dude, look at the time.
Sure.
Look at the time when that does happen, and the differences of feedback. Because when you're doing a calf raise, the tendon is responding to the muscle. The muscle is pulling the tendon, and the tendon is like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of my crimp, and I'm gonna get linear and get this stretch. I'm gonna get strain. I'm gonna get
Yep.
deformation. But when you get that, someone steps back in the false step, the feedback, where is it coming from? I think it's coming from the bone first. The bone is pulling on the tendon first, and then the calf is
Okay.
going to be engaging. So it's almost like reverse of what we'd think in the weight room, because in the weight room the iso or the lifting is coming from the muscle first. You're getting strain on the tendon through the muscle because
Right.
the muscle's pulling on it. But then you get into sport and it's happening so fast, and it's probably coming the strain on the tendon is happening because the calcaneus is just getting shoved down into the earth. You know, and
Sure.
if it actually
Yeah.
if the Achilles did not engage, the calcaneus would actually like hit the floor. So it has to engage, and for some reason it just can't at that moment. And I don't know. Do you need the calf to? I don't know exactly what would be happening to cause this massive amount of deformation on the tendon, which would cause everything to break at that moment. But I do know that it's like the way we look at it, muscle. Most of what we do, muscles pulling on tendon, then pulling on bone. But the opposite's happening. There is like the bone is pulling on the tendon, and then the muscle. But again, it takes care of itself because we do like plyometrics kind of take care of that. If you do pogo hops or something,
Sure.
so
Yep.
the far extreme example of it, maybe where we could take this is say a powerlifter or a bodybuilder, because sometimes you see them go into sport and rupture a tendon. Like they got strong muscles, they got super strong muscles,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
their
Yeah. Yeah.
only feedback on their tendons, at least they walk around and they'd probably do things like that. But the feedback, the way their tendon works, is only by the muscle pulling on it first, and then
Not. Yeah.
moving the bone or whatever. But when you get into the sport, it's bone, then tendon, then muscle. This is just a speculation I have. I could be completely off, but it kind of makes sense in my brain
Sure.
that you're getting a reversal of the way the tendon has to work. And the thing I've thought now too, to cover this, if people are at all interested, maybe they're not, I mean, I'm slightly interested, is then you would think, okay, you have two ends of the tendon. You have the muscle, the end of the tendon that's attached to the muscle. You have the end of the tendon that's attached to the
Yep.
bone. And
Right.
based on those differences of feedback, do you get different deformations of the muscle end or the tendon end and the bone end? And from the research I've read, the answer is no. The whole tendon, when the tendon deforms, the whole tendon deforms. So regardless of where you're getting
Okay.
that feedback, the entire tendon is going to just kind of pull in a linear fashion. Now, dude, what's interesting as well, I'm just going to keep talking about these random things, is when you
No,
talk
you're
about these
good.
fat. So
I like
if
it.
I say there's like 80 fascicles in the patellar tendon, which tomorrow I might get on a thing where I just want to read on the fascicles for a few hours, and I might find out that there's only like 40. I don't know. But one of the ideas is when you get a tendon pain, you get pathology, you may have damaged one of the fascicles, just a few of the fascicles that are completely compromised, and then the other ones just take over. So it's like, how does your tendon work now? Does your whole entire tendon deform like it used to when you have a tendon pain? Because now you might have some fascicles that are just like out of commission and not really working anymore. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
So, okay, then I have a couple other questions with that. So if we are making the speculation, or if we're talking about bones pulling on tendons, does the lever system, do we need to start taking in consideration levers and to say, okay, how does the effect of the levers pull on tendons, or at least get them to respond in some type of way, or like, is that I mean, I got to make the assumption that's got to be a component to it, because if the tendon connects the muscle to the bone, it's the bridge that connects the muscle to the bone. Then if we're saying, okay, make stronger muscles to, potentially help make tendons stronger, what about the bones and the angles, or how the bone is pulling on the tendon? Does that have an effect on the tendon as well? Whether that's an Achilles or whether that is, I mean, the patella is a little bit different because your knee really only bends and extends, right? But like the ankle can do a little bit more. Does that come into play as well?
Yeah, I mean, like, again, the body, the body. Really. Well, I think the body usually takes care of things, and so like the body takes care of things, but it's like when you put pain into the system, then the body like does not really take care of things. And with the so like I think this would be an argument of in the tendon world, there's an argument of biomechanics versus load tolerance, and so the load tolerance approach for a tendon would just be like load the sucker. That's it. Just load it. Load the thing until pain decreases and you can function again. And then the biomechanics way, biomechanics just means how a person moves, would be. I've had to Google the definition of biomechanics, because people throw around biomechanics, like the biomechanics, and they're doing like a PRI, breathing into a balloon, biomechanics, and I'm like, that ain't the same biomechanics of the actual biomechanics in sport. Like, you think that this is affecting the biomechanics there. Like, I understand, or I kind of understand the idea you're presenting, but I'm like, those are very different biomechanics. Like low level versus very high level movement. But so biomechanics would be, and I think with the patellar tendon is like, that kind of just figures itself out. Pretty stupid joint. But the Achilles is like biomechanics. And I had this talk with David Gray, and it's like, David Gray is just very smart, and he has that Irish accent, so people love him. But it's like the Achilles, biomechanics matter a lot with the Achilles, and you can probably experience it for yourself if you ever sprain your ankle. The one of the ideas is like the foot gets kind of stuck. I guess the calcaneus kind of gets stuck in more of like the foot gets supinated, calcaneus inverted. I think it'd be more inverted. So it's like your calcaneus doesn't move. It doesn't, like Darren Barr says, it doesn't rock and roll like it should, and it doesn't move like it needs to. So you might develop some like overuse on your Achilles. You might develop some Achilles pain after having an insult to your Achilles. So it's like there could be a case where the bone that it's attached to needs to regain its normal motion, and then that might help the person. But does that happen with the patellar tendon? I don't know. I don't really think so. But it's like it's so evident with the Achilles, because people who sprain their ankles, they might just get their foot kind of gets locked up, and then they start to get this Achilles stiffness. It's like maybe that's what's going on. But with the patellar tendon, it's like you really don't get anything happening like that. And there's many different ways. You see people with very knee dominant, like super knee dominant athletes, and you'd be thinking like, okay, is your patellar tendon going to be more compromised, or is your patellar tendon just a beast now because you're a knee dominant athlete? And then you have a hip dominant.
And you've been that way.
Yeah, and then you have a hip dominant athlete where it's like, okay, you're kind of sparing your patellar tendon, but do you now have like a weaker patellar tendon? I mean, I don't know. And it's like, again, the body kind of figures it out. If you're knee dominant, you're knee dominant. If you're hip dominant, you're hip dominant. And you go into sports and you just move that way. And your body usually knows how to manage the forces. It's like, if you're not meant to land super knee dominant, your body probably don't want you to, and you're going to be bending at your low back. And that might be a case where it's like, oh, just kind of leave it alone. No pain. We're fine.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And it's really interesting when you start looking at athletes that way, how they move, right? Because everybody moves so differently. But you look at it that way, and then you see like repetitive things with somebody that's probably a hip dominant athlete, might have more low back. And I don't want to use the word injuries, but stiffness or irritation or it's always bothering them. It doesn't mean that it's an injury, but it's there's just more load potentially placed on that continuously, and maybe your body just can't handle that. Maybe we need to look at other things. Maybe there's just so much with that. But with the patellar tendon and the quad tendon, looking at those two in relation to jumping, and more specifically, and I'm curious of this, what about the landing component of it? Because, when we think of jumping, we think of it as an elastic thing, and it is, right? It's very tendon driven from an energy production standpoint. But like, what about the landing aspect of it? Like, how much does that play? How much does that come into play? Are the patellar and quad tendon associated with that? Is that more like meniscal? Obviously, like when we're landing, we're talking about like the absorption of force and stuff, but like, or if you want to use the word absorption, but like, does that make sense? Is the tendon really involved in the landing component of it? And, if so, like how, and is that important to train that aspect of it too?
Yeah. I mean, I did have that a while ago. I can't even think off the top of my head what I was,
Sure.
like, so Jill Cook has been so influential. She's so entertaining to listen to. She speaks in absolutes. I love it. And maybe, it might lead some people astray because it's like, you might take a case. So like you might take a case where she will say that weighted jumping is a terrible thing to do for a patellar tendon. But then you could have some people that do a body weight jump and they have patellar tendon pain, and then they do a weighted jump and they don't have patellar tendon pain, and it's like, well, what do you say now? And it's like,
yeah.
And that's where I would say, like, dude, who cares what Jill says? You're fine to do a weighted jump. Go do a weighted jump. It's like, we don't really know what's going on, and it's pain. There's so many factors, but it's like, to the loading aspect would be like, okay, well, maybe it is more load on the patellar tendon because it's weighted, but it could be causing some other thing. It could be causing it to jump differently, and that's why it doesn't hurt. I don't know.
Sure.
But the whole, so she had a thing about jumping and landing, and it was like, I think they had a study. It was called like jumper's knee or lander's knee, and they were saying how the forces are, whatever. But she had said on her first show that it's when you have a reversal that you load the tendon the most. So when you reverse you dip down and dip down and then come up, it's that bottom where the tendon is stretched and needs to reverse that's going to be very high tendon load. And then when you land, you don't really have that reversal because you're just landing. You're just like kind of taking it in, But I've kind of struggled with that because some people, they can not have pain when they jump and then they have pain when they land, So it's like, again, right. I don't necessarily know. And then you have different styles of landing. Dude, it's like, sometimes, and then you could have like the ugliest landings where guys are landing on one leg and then falling on their side and things. So it's like the jumping is the aspect for me that's like pretty well regulated, that guys are going to jump how they're going to jump. Like you have your body and you have your way of jumping. You can jump left, right. You can jump off the left leg, off the right leg, left, right, left. For distance, for height. There's so many different ways that your body can jump, but it's all going to look pretty much the same. Landing is just like a million ways to land, and your body kind of figures out the ways of landing. And it's always just like usually it's like you're finding a way to dissipate the force over a longer period of time or over more of your body segment. So you might just fall over. So like jumping and landing, I don't really do too much on landing. The thing with landing, just like with jumping, someone has patellar tendon pain, they just don't usually want to bend their knees. They usually play stiff-legged. So when they jump very stiff. When they land very stiff. So in patellar tendon rehab, that's just like Jill had said, if you move like a duck and you've done all the isos and lifting, like, and you still move like a duck, you're really no better off. So it's like, that is one thing where as you get later stage rehab, just make sure someone can like bend their knees when they jump and land. Make sure their jumping looks like a good jump, but then when they land, it's like they're not just landing. They only land super stiff. They land stiff. They land with a knee bend. Yeah. They land on one leg, land on two legs. They land split stance. They land in a number of different ways. Just make sure they can do all those things. And usually those things are kind of boring to do, all the variations of jumping and landing. Yeah. And if you're dealing with a dopamine dominant athlete or a basketball athlete, just someone of that nature, it's like, you might do a little bit of it, but you're going to get to the point where you just throw them into the wolves, baby, and let's go see if it works.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, because like, if anybody's okay, so if you're listening or watching to this and you've actually like watched people dunk and you actually like know basketball and you're watching them dunk, not just like on the court, hey, I'm going out to the backyard to dunk, but in a game environment. Like the dunking is fascinating, but the landing, if you ever watch them 9 out of 10 times, or maybe not 9 out of 10 times, but a lot of times they land like on the ground, right? You see them getting up to go back and play defense or transition or whatever. And it's because of the fact that they typically come down on one leg, semi-rotation, if rotation is even a word, but in some sort of rotation, right? And then they just kind of just fall over, right? Like you don't get it. It's funny because when we train landing, specifically in the weight room, we train it in this beautiful matter of I jump straight up and then I jump straight or I come straight down and I land on these 2 feet. It's so sound and it's perfect and I stick it. And it's like, that's not what the environment of sport is like at all, regardless of sport. The only time I can really see that is like in tennis when they throw the ball up and they jump a little bit and they come straight down. Like that's really the only time I see it. Volleyball, it's not like that. Football, it's not like that. Basketball, it's not like that. Like they land in the most chaotic and collision oriented ways, and it's just kind of the body's aspect of dealing with that collision and more so dissipating the forces than it is like absorbing. But it's just how can we dissipate this? And if I have a larger surface area, which is my whole body landing on the ground, like it's spread out much greater. My back and my lat can take a lot more than my the ball of my foot. So it's really interesting. That's why I was always curious about that. Is like how much of that is really like impacted by landing, because a lot of times too is when we go dunk a ball, we're jumping higher than what we do in training, or we're training it more. And so it's just really interesting to see that, and it's always fascinating to see like how guys have collisions and orient themselves on the ground and land in a way where it's they're just kind of doing a barrel roll to an extent just to get back up. It's really interesting from that standpoint, and you see it. It's so fascinating.
You see, yeah, dude, and even with like, I know for a while with jumping, I was influenced at the university of like getting the knees out with jumping. So I just posted a ton of content on everyone jumping with their knees in. And it's like you used to watch basketball guys and watch any game, man. Watch them shoot a 3-pointer. And it depends on their style, but a lot of guys stand wide. Their knees are like just dumping in like crazy. And when it comes to, because some people will rehab their patellar tendon and their patellar tendon hurts more on the inside of their knee. Like it hurts under the kneecap, but more on the inside. And it's like for a while I didn't have an answer to that, but there was some research where they looked at the what was the term? I don't know, but they looked at the patella and the scalp. Like the bone is made up of all this scaffolding. If you kind of look at the internal workings of the bone, and there was way more scaffolding on the inside of the patella. So the idea is that the force when you jump or whatever, it would be like the force is kind of running more through the inside. So maybe that would support the more knees in thing, because guys you're just naturally are going to be jumping and land, or maybe not land, but like you're going to be jumping more with the knees in. And then the force is running more so through the patellar tendon on the inside area. So it's like when you go talk about like landing mechanics, we just talk about landing mechanics, but you talk about jumping mechanics. It's like, do we need to get the knees out with the jumping? And it's like, well, if the scaffolding is already built like that in most people, then and your knees are just going to go like that anyways, like we could probably just leave that alone. And if you have more pain on the inside, like that's kind of probably where it should be happening if you did get pain, because probably where the pathology is going to happen anyways. But it's like, again, if you do address that with the rehab and you try to get them to fix their jumping style, or like not have so much knees in, you are going to reach the point you throw them back to the wolves and their knees are going to go in again.
And yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, look at it too, right? It's really funny because like by the time, that they get to, let's say, a collegiate coach or professional coach or a private guy, right? Where they're trying to make it to the league, they're in the league, whatever the case may be, like how many reps have they done of that already? And, your small dosage or your potential adjustment of that, like in game, one, I don't want them thinking about that, right? Because that would negatively affect their performance in game. And then secondly, like they're just going to revert back to their old patterns because the ingraining aspect of it is like, I've done, let's just say 1,000,000 reps of it like this. It's just naturally going to occur like that. Like sure, my movement bandwidth might adjust a tad, but it's not like I'm just going to see a dramatic fix and be like, oh my gosh, because I worked with them, now all of a sudden, it's just really interesting from that standpoint. It's like they've done this a million times plus, probably way more than that in all honesty. But it's just like, do we really think it's going to have an effect, let alone a performance effect? Like, it's really interesting to see that. You see that with like top end sprinters too, that let's say they have like really poor back end mechanics, but they're really good. It's like, are you going to spend the time to try and fix that? Or are you just going to like have them, continue to do that because they're really good, right? It's like, where do you kind of make the assumption of like, I'm just not going to fix that. That's just who they are, and that's just how they're going to play, and like we're just going to leave it. Like it's really interesting from
Yeah,
that
it's
standpoint.
man, this is the problem. This is the problem at college athletics, or when you work with an entire team, is like work with an entire team at once. Like you can never, because dude, there's some athletes don't, like, not even arguing the objective truth of it. Like there's some athletes who just love doing that different stuff, man. They just love it. Like if you're gonna tell a guy, if that's who you are as a coach, that's really your person. It is not my personality, because I'm way hands off. I'm like, just leave everything alone. But you're going to have, and this turns off a lot of athletes. You're going to have a coach who's really hands on, and he's really about looking at all the intricacies of movement. And you're going to have an athlete who really vibes with that coach, and they just love it. And it's like, you just leave that alone. Go ahead. That's fine. But then when you get at college level, it's like, you got to work with everyone at once. So that's kind of one of the problems. But I'm not going to knock people. I don't like, I probably used to have, but I just, dude, as I get older, I care so little what everyone else is doing. I do not care what people do. I'm like, you are free to do whatever you want. It's like, Lance Stevenson wants to do the dumbest workouts ever. LeBron wants to do something on a bocce ball, dude. I really don't care. And for us to argue the objectivity of like, well, he shouldn't be doing that for his that's not a good core exercise, or that's not this or that. It's like, dude, there's a subjective element to training. There's a perception element of training, and that's what you're touching on there. And you, Mr. Scientific guy, why don't you go train LeBron? And it ain't going to work out for you. He's going to be done after one session, because it's like he does just don't care. So it's like, let's just leave people alone. Let them do what they want to do.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because like we really put the microscope or the lens on like training that super high profile athlete, and they're like, what are we doing with them, right? And it's just like,
dude, I look at it. I'm like, it don't matter, because you see all the stuff they're doing, and it's a lot of the stuff we do see is very low level. And where do they get their training from? They get their training from playing against the Wolves, baby. They throw them into the Wolves, and that's where you get the adaptation and the stimulus. And the stuff on the side, the little weak weight room stuff they're doing, it ain't really doing much. It might be checking this box and doing a little bit of weight room stuff, but then it makes us as a strength professional look at it and be like, man, the stuff we preach about, like getting all these numbers up, whatever, is like, that ain't what's separating Steph Curry. That ain't what's separating LeBron. And then we can say, well,
or KD.
Yeah, or then you could say, well, Michael Jordan lifted weights. It's like, okay, well, sure, everyone should lift weights, but let's just admit it that it probably ain't the differentiating factor. If you had a really physical athlete who was just weak as piss and you got him super strong, that's probably going to have a big payoff. But you take someone who's like really fast and needs to be like, they just have a style of play that isn't good for, isn't conducive to that type of like heavy weight room force style. Man, let's just check the box, but just admit to yourself that like it really ain't probably having that big of an effect. So it really might not even matter what they're doing. They're still getting high stimulus. Their body is still adapting. They're getting high stimulus by playing against the Wolves that they're playing against.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Like the guy that comes to mind for me is like AI, right? Like, and he's so famous for like weights. Like, I don't need that. Like his whole press conference is going on, and like the dude was an electric player, right? Like, and from the strength coach, like putting that hat on, we're like, yeah, like you're so good at your sport, you're so good at your skill, like you're phenomenal, and there's no argument on that. And we're like, but you should do these like things to like make your body robust and like decrease your injury or like hopefully reduce the percentage of you not being injured. And so like a certain part of me still like lives in that, where it's like, hey, yeah, I get that you don't want to, and maybe we don't need to 1 rep max AI on a back squat, and let alone he would probably never ever do it either, right? But like a part of me is like, yeah, like well, let's just make sure like you're physically prepared. And that's where it's really funny, because then we like look at it and it's like our job as a strength coach is like just really general preparation, right? Like, let's be honest, is like there's no basketball specific exercise. There's no like, and I love people do that, and like it's all for marketing and stuff like that. But it's just like, it's just all general prep, right? And like you would probably even say it's like your hypertrophy clusters, like the movements on there, not the but the movements are just general movements, you know, and hey, we're doing the big compound movements and we're just going to do this simple thing of like add 5 pounds or 5% every week. And look at that. Wow, you got stronger.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
right?
dude.
Like,
So I was, I've been thinking this recently we have,
like
so we have,
yeah.
you have this talk with testosterone levels in the environment and how the plastics are killing out testosterone, you know, and it's like, this is this is crazy to me that I'm like, if you just look at a snapshot of testosterone, like if you're laying on a couch, you need super high testosterone. No, you don't need super high testosterone laying on the couch. If you were in, and I'm gonna use the movie, and we're just gonna say that it was completely real. If you're in the movie Gladiator and you're well, was it Maximus? You're Maximus. The dude is emaciated and he's malnourished and he's in a cage. He has higher testosterone than anyone living today, unless they're injecting steroids, maybe. But you have high testosterone because you need it. You need high testosterone. So you need it to go and function and do what you're going to do. So you take any super gifted athlete who's kind of like, you don't get along with the guy. He's dopamine dominant. He's just like resistant to you as a coach. High testosterone. This dude is courageous. He's super high testosterone. The reason he is the way he is because he is not subservient to anyone. He doesn't listen to people. He doesn't. He's like an autodidactic. He does what he needs to do. That's how he lives his whole life. And then you put the guy in the weight room, and you got a strength coach now who's telling him exactly what to do, and that he's doing everything wrong, and he needs to listen to you. And then you might even say, you got to get more sleep, man, because your testosterone levels are going to plummet if you get 4 hours of sleep versus 8 hours of sleep. Whereas really, he keeps his testosterone levels elevated by just being the guy that he is. And the guy that he is does not get along with you as a coach. And now you're trying to change him and make him a lesser version by getting his 8 hours of sleep and by listening to you and doing everything properly. Whereas he gets his testosterone levels by being a maverick and being a renegade and going against the grain. So it's like, it's crazy, man, that we stand on this, we put ourselves on this pedestal of having scientific knowledge. Whereas, how do you really know that thing? Like you're taking these testosterone samples, you should probably take them 24 hours during the day and see as they go up. So like one example, didn't they have a piece of research where if you talk to a new woman, your testosterone skyrockets. If you go and approach a new woman that you've never met before, or you're around a group of women or something, your testosterone skyrockets. So that's a situation where like, you don't need to eat the grass-fed beef. You don't need to eat the butter. You don't need to get your 8 hours of sleep. If you get in this certain type of environment, and this type of gifted athlete might always be able to recreate that type of environment by just being the courageous person that they are. And now it's like, hey, Mr. Athlete, I know that you have been living your life off intuition, but now we're going to use science. We're going to use science and we're going to optimize what you're doing. And maybe what you've done is actually completely sabotage everything about him. So it's like, it really makes me question because I've worked with athletes that I just do not get along with and they just piss you off. And it's like, what is wrong with this guy? And you're thinking you have all these answers and secrets to fix them and make them better. But it's like, what you're really saying is you're trying to change the way this person is. And that's probably going to take away all of his strengths, you know? So what is the answer? I don't know. But because of the way that I have become as I get just the laissez-faire lifestyle, I'm just like, I just leave people alone, man. And I'm like, if people are about it, they're about it. If some athlete wants to run hypertrophy clusters, they want to run hypertrophy clusters. Do they want to run hypertrophy clusters to get better at basketball? I'd be like, well, that's kind of stupid. Don't do that. But if you want to run it just to run it, if you want to run it because you want to get big, then run it. But if you're going to do it for some other thing, then maybe not. Maybe we don't need to be doing that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like, you know, based off our conversation, like, yesterday and stuff too, it's just like, you know, you would probably put yourself in that bucket. And what I mean by that is like somebody that's just like, just leave me alone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you were a college athlete today and you had a strength coach, let's say you have the knowledge that you have as well, right? Well, let's say you did it, just you, high octane. Hey, like we're just running, like I'm freaking charged up 24/7. And you got this guy that's freaking telling you what to do, how to do it, you're doing it wrong, and you're just probably gonna be like, dude, I'm just gonna fight you. Like I'm literally probably just gonna fight you right now, you know? And that happens. Let's be honest, there's strength coaches that do fight their athletes, or at least they like to talk about it. But it's really fun, right? Because they gotta assert their dominance and stuff. It's really interesting. And then to the aspect of like testosterone today is like, dude, it's crazy to see like the decline in testosterone in men. Even from 20 years ago, from 30 years ago, from 100 years ago, right? Like, you would naturally have higher testosterone if your life was based on you literally hunting and gathering to survive, right? Like, you wouldn't be like, I'm just going to sit here. Like, no, you have to go.
Yeah,
And
dude. Yeah, because like,
they didn't have
shoes. You need. Yeah,
you know what
it's
I'm saying? Like,
it's like you need testosterone. If you're dude, if you sit in an office or you're sitting on the couch all day, what do you need testosterone for? You don't need it for anything. You might get a little boost by going to the gym because now your body's like, oh, dude, I need some vitality, and like, but if you're like dating someone, you're married to someone, you come home and they're just like yelling at you. You think you're gonna have high testosterone? You don't like the person that you're with. It's like, so there was how we've like made a science out of it. It's like it's just natural, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. We made a science out of optimizing testosterone, whereas it's like the guys who have the highest testosterone have no science at all. They have no science into what they do. They just are the way that they are. And you know what? Maybe there's some athletes who just are not meant to have high testosterone. Maybe that's like a golfer. Maybe that's like a golfer or something. Sure. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny. So we have a farm in Iowa, right? And my dad and his brothers, so my uncles, they had like I think like over 100 head of cattle growing up, milk cows, right? So they had to go out and milk cattle twice a day. That's pretty much how they lived. I mean, that is how they lived growing up, right? And it's really funny because now we talk to people about you need to get outside for at least 20 minutes, right? Like that's kind of like the big thing. You got to get outside for at least 20 minutes. Should do it right away, like when you wake up and stuff, to boost your testosterone, right? Like to get that component of it, because we know that nature's such a amazing thing and that we should spend more time in nature or at least outside, right? But it's really funny because they weren't having those conversations 30 years ago, right? Because they were outside from 5 a.m. till like 7 p.m. anyways, right? Like there wasn't, hey, just come inside and sit on the couch and hang out, right? Like, they were outside, they were working, physically working, throwing hay bales, milking cows, doing all that type of stuff. And that's just, my family, but there's hundreds and thousands and millions of families across the United States and the world that still do that consistently. But it's like they were so strong because they're just throwing hay bales around, right? They weren't worried about technique. They weren't worried about anything. There was just literally 80-pound hay bale, pick it up, throw it. How many of them? There's 150 of them today, and we got to come back tomorrow and do it all over again, right? Like they're just farm strong like that because like that's just what they did for however many years. But then if you put them in a weight room, right? Like they might be strong in some stuff, but then they weren't strong in other stuff, right? It's just really interesting. But they didn't have to worry about testosterone or did I eat my butter today or did I, whatever, right? They're like, did I get enough sun? They're like, enough sun? Are you kidding me? I look brown, right? Like it's just really interesting to see like where we're at today, which is just kind of the reverse of like, get your asses outside and like just be a man, really more so than like just sit in here and watch your Grey's Anatomy. Like, dude, what? Like, why? Like, why is that even interested to you? I mean, I don't know, but it's just really interesting. Like, let's go shoot guns for 5 hours. Like, I promise you're gonna love it. It's just really interesting to see that the change in such a short period of time.
It's like, dude, I feel the same way actually. But what I'm working on now, like tendon science, and I feel like it probably isn't everyone, but it's like the more scientific knowledge that you get about some subject matter, this isn't everyone, maybe it's just a subgroup of people. The more scientific knowledge, the softer the person becomes. The softer they become. And it's like go back to the Jill Cook thing, where she's like, weighted plyometrics are bad for your patellar tendon. This person has had the experience of doing a weighted plyometric and it doesn't hurt their patellar tendon. And they are still going to ask me, hey, why is this happening? And it's like, did you seriously outsource your experience of life to what Jill Cook said? You outsourced your experience of life. You outsourced your intuition to what a scientific expert has said. What is wrong with you? Like, it's crazy. Yeah. So I feel like all that scientific stuff, I don't know if you should put a preface, because it doesn't affect everyone. Some person can get a super in-depth understanding of the science and then also pair that with, well, you got to not be soft though. You got to actually train, and that's again where that. I mean, I don't know why I've used that phrase so many times, but like this is where you can have all the scientific knowledge about a tendon and about rehab and whatever, but at some point you got to be thrown back to the wolves. At some point, it has to happen. So it's
no, it's you're spot on though. I mean, like we read it and then we go. It's funny because what you're saying is so true, right?
Dude, and then it's like, sorry, the whole thing with like, was it Louis Simmons that was like testosterone drops after 45 minutes, so we only train for 45 minutes, or something like that? Was it Louis Simmons? I don't know, but it was like that. Then we could take that idea and be like, well, we should only train 45 minutes because we're going to get quality work 45 minutes. But you might, dude, what if there's an athlete who like gives quality work, has such good effort, such good intent for 45 minutes, and they have more energy in them to train 2 more hours? And you're going to be like, oh no, bro, like your testosterone's going to drop off. We can't, you got to get out of here. And they're hungry and they're hungry. They want to keep training. They want to keep pushing. Dude, I get this too. Like go back to the testosterone and the environment thing is like, I've been at gym so many times, whether I'm by myself or with the boys, and you're training, and your session is done. You've trained for 90 minutes. You've killed yourself, and then this girl walks in that just like lights your soul on fire, and you're like, "We're gonna keep going, bro. We're gonna max deadlift today." Where's science now? Where's the science? I mean, I guess there is some science because it's like now, well, maybe you want to science that thing, but I'm like. You're going to science it the other way too and be like, well, your session's done 90 minutes. You've reached the dosage of volume you can handle. It's like, man, dude, I'm so influenced early on my patellar tendon rehab. I read an article. I started reading John Bros. He had a gym in Las Vegas, and he used to do Bulgarian squatting. So they would squat to a max every single day. Yep. If you've ever seen that, I should go to Vegas and meet the dude. One of his articles was how your body feels is a lie. I think that was the title of his article, because you go, and I experienced this when I was rehabbing my patellar tendon, like in a smarter way for the first time, actually loading the thing, was I started squatting every day, and I squatted, I think 95 or like 135 the first day. I could deadlift 400 or 500 pounds, and I could only squat like 95 or 135 because I literally did not I was afraid of loading my knees. I was completely afraid of loading my knees. So I squatted every day for like 3 months, I think, sometimes twice a day. It was just build up to a heavy single. And it was like, I went from like 135 to I think 315 or 350, maybe 400 at the end of that. And dude, some days you'd walk in because you just squatted to a max yesterday and you would feel awful. Like you couldn't even bend your knees. You'd get the bar on your back and you would have like, I'm just going to go in and do reps with the bar. And then you'd be like, oh, I'm going to put a plate on. You put a plate on. Then you put another plate on. And then you hit a PR. You come in and you felt like a 0 out of 10 and you hit a PR that day. So I think I've been influenced by that, where it's like you have the Oura rings and the whoop bands and everything. And it's like, dude, that's got to be a lie. Because you could go in and if for some reason, it might be the environment, it might be a girl walked in, or it might be that some other thing, and you had the best training day you had in the last month, but you're reading what you were in the red in the reading. So yeah.
It's so funny you say that, and I don't mean to cut you off. It's so funny you say that because some of my best training sessions when I feel the strongest, and not only do I feel the strongest, but if I produce the most, is when I got no sleep and I haven't had any meals and I've had like minimal water, right? Like, so like if I was to train at, like 6 a.m., and let's say for whatever reason I couldn't get to sleep that night, which for me like happens more often than not. I'm a night owl, right? Like if I don't have to get up in the morning, I won't. But if I have to get up for something, I will. Right, legitimately, right? So if I have something at 7 a.m., like I will be there and I will do that. But if I don't, I will sleep till like 9, 10, 11, and that's a really bad habit of mine. But it is what it is. But when I do train in the morning, and let's say I got no sleep, maybe I went to bed at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever, and I trained early, and I'm just like, this is not optimal. I have the best sessions. I feel the strongest, maybe because my testosterone's the highest in the morning, whatever, don't know, don't care, but I'm just like, I'm going to pump as much iron until there's no more left. But it's like I have the best, and people would be like, well, that's not the most optimal thing. It's like, yeah, well, I don't know. It's when I feel really strong. Like, what do you want me to do? And then sometimes when I train in the afternoon, right, if I don't over caffeinate myself, and I say that sarcastically, but if I don't like do that, then it's like a terrible training session. I'm not focused. I'm not, and it's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like science that, I don't know, but it's just really interesting to see that where it's like, if I train in the afternoon, a lot of times the shitty sessions, like I'm just like, I just didn't feel like I got anything done, you know?
It's like anti Huberman, you know, anti optimal, and I've really connected to that type of thought recently because I listened to a lot of the Huberman stuff. And I tried to do that when I have the hardest time writing these books. I guess I've written like four or five, I don't know, but recently has been so difficult because I'm broaching these topics which are they're just confusing, man. And I tried the Huberman stuff where it's like, here's how you focus. You got to wake up and do the sunlight and then delay the caffeine and then take tyrosine and take all it. And I'm like, dude, this is crazy. You know, you're doing all these things before actually sitting down and doing the work. So like I had my last book was the anterior knee pain. It was sorting out the anterior knee pain causes. And I just put it out for free, man. That thing destroyed me. But I was like, I'm just going to put it out for free because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a guy looking at scans, so I don't even feel that confident putting out something on looking at those type of pains, anyways. But I'm like, you know what? There's like 10 different structures at the front of the knee. Your pain could be about 10 different things. Because I kind of got frustrated. People would be like, "Hey, my knee hurts, so I do isos." So I'm like, let me put out this thing so that you can kind of understand the knee a little bit better, understand the structures of the knee, what could be causing your pain. Because if you have a fat pad, you don't got to do isos. If you have a plica issue, you don't got to do isos. Right. If you have like patellofemoral pain, you might have to do something a little different. So there are different things, but in reality, rehab is kind of simple, I guess, unless you need to get surgery. But so like, dude, I tried the Huberman thing. I'm trying all this optimal things to try to focus and whatever. And I just reached this point. I was traveling. I was in Boise, Idaho. And I just got super pissed that I wasn't done with the thing. And I got it done in 2 days. I just sat there all day and caffeinated like crazy. I went on walks every once in a while. I ate a bunch of pistachios because I used to eat a lot of sunflower seeds, and there's just like a ton of sodium. And if you eat pistachios, it's kind of more balanced sodium and potassium. So I ate a lot of pistachios. And dude, in 2 days, I pumped that thing out. Like I don't know how my sleep was. I don't know how anything was. I just ignored everything else in my life. I pumped that thing out in 2 days, and it was like the anti-Huberman experience where like I just went contrary to anything he could possibly say. And I got that thing done. So I'm like, I really connect with this like anti-optimal crowd of people now that seem like they're coming out. It's like the optimal people came out, and now you have the anti-optimal people coming out who are more about like the human spirit and just having vitality, just like having gusto. You know, it's like I was back in Minneapolis. I was training with my buddy at 5. We train at 5:20 a.m. And dude, I would have nights where I slept like 3 hours because I was just on fire about something that was going on in my life. And I would go and I have great sessions. And he's like, dude, you should probably go to the doctor, get that checked out. You got some problem. I'm like, bro, I feel amazing. I have not felt this good. I have not felt this good in like 3 years. Or like, I don't know if I felt this good ever. And I'm like, I'm not doing what's optimal. I am not doing what's optimal. But I feel great. And I'm getting some things done.
Are you familiar with? And it's not that I'm anti-Huberman.
No, I do love him. I just say that to be funny, you know.
Yeah. Are you familiar? Do you know who Alex Hormozi is?
Yeah. I got big into Alex Hormozi stuff too, and I'm like, Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just really funny because what he talks about, one of the things that he talks about a lot, is like the mental masturbation of you actually accomplishing your things, but you're not actually doing them. Which is like, I got to do my visualization, I got to do my journaling, I got to do my meditation, then I got to do this. And then it's just like, he's like, you just delayed doing the thing that you need to be doing. So just like, do what you need to do. And it's just like, it's like so simple, and it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's just do that. I mean, and like, obviously he's wildly successful and stuff, but it's just like, he's like, just stop delaying what you need to do.
Yeah. Going back to the guy that's like, I love you say high octane, it's like, but there's some days I wake up and it takes me like 3 hours to get going, like I'll walk into, what happened this morning? I woke up and where was I? I don't even know. I walked into CVS. I had to get some water, dude, I'm like a zombie, but I feel great, but I'm like, I'm not like, there's no like high energy, no nothing. I'll take a while to get fired up to go. But I'm like, where was I even going with this thing? Where was I going? What were you just talking about? The Hormozy thing. Hormozy, yeah, Hormozy, yeah,
high octane,
dude. But the thing, I am so much like, if you want like high octane, but like resistant. The term I love is recalcitrant. You see this in patellar, like a recalcitrant patellar tendinopathy is one that just does not go away, one that just sticks around and is stubborn. And I'm like, I am a recalcitrant person, and that's why I can't work in a university. That's why I can't work under people, and that's why I went out and started my own business. I can't work under someone. It is so against me, and that's how I was for 27 years. I was working in a system that was so much against me, but I had to figure it out for myself. And I listened last summer. I listened to every Hormozy thing. I loved him. I loved everything he was talking about. And but still, I would hear that, and you'd be like, you were doing all those visualizations, you're getting sunlight, you're getting the coffee and the meals, you just got to sit down and work. And I heard that, and it hits really well, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But dude, I still wouldn't do it. And I think for me, it was like, I just had to go through like 2 years. I'd say 2 years. I had to go through 2 years of just pain and misery of knowing that I need to sit down and do the thing and not do the thing. I had to go through all of that. And now I think that I'm at the point where I've experienced that pain and misery. And actually, dude, it was pain and misery of me traveling the country, and I'm in like Provo, Utah with beautiful mountains. I'm hiking all the time. I'm going to beaches in California. And for me, that is actually miserable. That is painful and miserable because I'm just chilling. And I have no purpose. I have no greater mission. I'm just chilling. That's all I was doing was chilling. And it's miserable for me.
Yeah.
And you might have people say, man, you got to learn to relax or whatever. And I'm like, dude, get out of here. Don't tell me what to do. So I'm so recalcitrant where I can't listen to anything from anyone else. I have to experience it for myself. So Hormozy can say that, but I still had to go through like another 1 year of going through the things where I'm like, I got to do X, Y, Z before I can do this. And now I can confidently say that I'm at the point where, like, if I know I got to sit down and do the thing, I'm just going to sit down and do the thing. That is the end of it. But it's the whole thing with like hearing the advice is kind of empty for me because I have to experience the loss for myself. I have to go through the pain and misery myself to know that I'm like, I don't want to go back to that. So now if I know I need to do something, I'm sitting down and doing the thing. But I don't, dude, I think it is like, it feels cool. I'm the middle child. I feel like the black. I'm the middle child of 7.
Me too.
So I'm like, my family is all like very nice, politically correct, and I've always just loved this identity of being the middle child, feeling like the black sheep, feeling like the outcast. I just love it, and I'm like, if I can, that's why I say anti-human. That's why I say anti-optimal, because I'm like anything that goes against the grain, I'm about it. Anything goes against the grain. So
that's you.
Hearing someone give me advice and me taking the advice, I don't do that. I have to hear the advice and me like, I agree with that, but I'm still going to go and do the opposite because I want to experience it. And then I can get it for myself and be like, you know what? That sucks. Now I know. But it's the experience. It's the experience, man. And I think you try to take people away from that experience. This is the weird thing, bro. Like, go back to the patellar tendon. People that don't have patellar tendon pain will be like, what should I do to avoid patellar tendon pain in the future? And it's like, you don't. You know, if you really, you know how I learned so much about patellar tendon is I absolutely shredded my patellar tendon by just overloading the thing. You know, I crashed and burned my patellar tendon. And that is why I know so much more than the average person on the patellar tendon, because I went through the experience. But it's so weird being a coach is you're almost trying to take away experiences from athletes. Being like, you can't do too much volume. You know, you can't do eccentric loading the day before a game, or you can't do X, Y, Z because it's going to whatever.
Sure.
And for a lot of them, it would probably work. But you're probably going to have that person that has that personality where like, they just got to experience it, man. And you're going to tell them,
I gotta try it.
Hey, you got to get 8 hours of sleep every night. You got to get 8 hours of sleep. They want to feel the 4 hours of sleep. They want to know how bad they perform on 4 hours of sleep. Let them do it, you know? And then it's almost like, you give the advice when they come and ask for the advice. But this is me. This is laissez-faire. I'm not like everyone else. That's the way I think. That's the way I think people could actually learn about something. Is like the textbooks. You can read in the textbooks and listen to podcasts over. The most powerful thing is the life experience of you going and getting the loss for yourself. You need to go and feel the loss for yourself, and you'll know so much more than any textbook or any podcast could give you.
Yeah, what you're saying is so true. And like, to boil it down to a simple statement, like, it's the pain that moves you, right? So like you had the pain for X amount of years, couple of years.
The
Well,
crisis, but
it
yeah.
was because the pain became so great, you're finally like, all right, well, let me freaking do something, right? Like, but until then, you're like, it's not that big of a deal. Just like if people don't have any money, right? Like, money's a huge motivator, but if they don't have any money, what are they motivated by? The fact that they don't have any money and the pain of that not having the money. So what do? They go and they make a lot of money, right? Like, or not a lot of money, but they go and they make money, and some make a lot of money, right? And it's the aspect that's really funny too. It's like if you've never traveled before, and people are like, I love traveling. It's like, where have you been? They're like, nowhere. It's like, well, then you don't love traveling, right? Like, can you talk about your experience of traveling? And they're like, well, no. It's like, well, then like you don't love traveling, right? Like, so you can't talk about it, right? It's no different. It's like somebody that if you were never fat and you're like, here's my experience. It's like, yeah, but you were never fat, so like you can't put yourself in those shoes because you were never there, right? Like you don't understand the pain, you don't understand the psychological, the emotion. Like there's so much other stuff that you just don't understand because you were never fat,
Yeah.
right? Like the people, or like here's how you look like me, and I'm jacked, and I'm on TRT, and I'm on all these other drugs. It's like, what? It's like you can't even. You're so far gone that you can't even relate to the person that's just trying to lose 10 freaking pounds because of the fact that you've been on TRT for the last decade. You know what I'm saying? It's just like it's just so mind blowing to me. So the point that I'm saying is like you have to go experience it, right? Like when I joined, I'll use myself as an example. When I joined the military, my dad's like, you're gonna go be an officer, but before you go be an officer, you're gonna go do the basic training, the AIT, only because so then you know what they experience and you can talk about it and you can understand. And so I did. And what it did on the back end when I went active duty and all that stuff is it got me a lot of respect really fast because people are like, oh, like I'd tell them like, yeah, I was enlisted. I did this. And they're like, you were prior enlisted. I was like, yeah, man, like 4 years. And they're like, cool, got you. So much more respect. So like, you know about this. I was like, yeah, I'll tell you all about my experience and all these things. And then the respect came like super fast because of the fact that I experienced it. Like, that's it. Not because of the fact that I had a rank that outranked them or anything like that. Literally because like, yeah, I'll tell you about my experience. You want to know about this? And they're like, yeah, sure. Here you go. Boom, done. And then they were like, this is my guy. I'm like, sweet, cool. Like, but it's just really funny. You know what I'm saying? Like but you have to, and it's just the classic saying of people like, go spend 10 years doing something and then start talking about it. Right. Because then you have the 10 years of experience you can talk about.
I know.
It,
I
you
see,
know?
dude. I
It's
see
just
that
really
with.
funny.
I see that with. I'm lucky. I'm so lucky that I started my business when it was like Facebook was around and that was it. I think Instagram just started, but like, dude, I wasn't. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Before the business, man, I was training for like 5 years. You know, so like, I had spent, and it's so weird
Yeah.
to look back. It's so weird to look back, and you're just so hungry to like reach your goals and be an influence and whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, it ain't the time for that, man. It ain't the time for that. You got to train. You got to train for 5 years. You got to make something out of yourself.
Yep.
Otherwise, everything you say is going to be kind of empty.
Yep.
Like if you, dude, I could sit here.
Yeah.
I could spend 1 week. Actually, I don't even think I could, but if I did, I could spend 1 week reading about everything on the ACL, everything that exists on the ACL, and talking to all the ACL experts. And then I could go and deliver my ACL product and try to connect to ACL people. It's going to be so empty because I never went through that myself. So it's like my niche, my area that no one can compete on is patellar tendon. Like I went through it, man. I went through it for 3 years. I had surgery on the thing, and it still comes up. It still will come up. It'll come up on my right side or my left side. It's like going through the experience just gives you this type of speech that hits people, and they will not mistake you for someone that doesn't know what they're talking about because like you went through it. Now it can kind of be dangerous too because now you have bias, you have your own individual bias, but it is powerful. And then also you could just look at like I responded really well to strength training. You just got to keep I think for myself, I'm able to keep an open mind. Some people are not because some people go through this experience and respond well to strength training and then say everyone needs strength training. But I'm going to step back and be like, dude, sometimes you get a little jumpers and you just rest a little bit. You'll be fine. Just do it, like kind of do whatever works. So like it's kind of having I don't know, humble is not the right word, but like kind of a open mind that is aware that you're going to be very biased based off of your own experience, you know?
Well, it's the thing of it's you can help the people most by the person that you were, right? So like what I mean by that is like you used to have patellar tendon pain, right? So who can you help the most? The people that are currently having it. Why? Because you've been there, you've experienced it, right? Like the person that you were, a couple of years ago, the person that was injured with patellar tendon pain and stuff, like you can now help those people because not only like have you taken a deep dive into it, but you know what they're going through, right? Like I can't help somebody ski because I don't ski myself. I snowboard. I love snowboarding. I love everything about it. I skiing, I'm like, I have zero interest. I don't want, like, you're dumb. Like, why are you putting two independent things on? Like, that's stupid. You know what I'm saying? But like, I love to board. And so like, I want to learn everything about snowboarding. I just love it. It's just so much fun. It's just so peaceful to me. It's like everything else doesn't matter when I'm on the mountain. I just literally, it's just amazing. But I'm not going to help the person that skis. You know what I'm saying? Like I was a college football player. I've had 3 meniscal surgeries. I don't have a meniscus. So I can help everybody with that, and it sucks. But like, you help the person the most who you once were. And if you've never gone through something, what you say falls short because it's empty, because you haven't been there, you haven't done that. So I like entrepreneurs when they speak and they talk about X, Y, and Z. It's like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And like, yeah, I've been doing it for 30 years. And it's like, okay, fair. Like you can't fake that, right? Like you can't fake that. So it's just really interesting from that aspect. And I think everybody struggles with it for a little bit. And I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in, because they're like, oh, I don't know if I should be talking about this. It's like, well, are you really like knowledgeable and have you experienced it? Because like if you've experienced something, no matter what you say, you're never going to be like, I don't know if I should say that, because it's like, that was your experience, right? Like that's just you telling the truth of your experience. Whereas like where it becomes imposter syndrome is like, you're just kind of talking just to talk, if that makes sense, and you're like, I hope this makes sense. I hope people understand this. I hope they would agree with that. So that's why you kind of hesitate to put it out if you kind of like have that feeling.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah, I
don't know.
man, I could say now. I used to have like imposter. I probably used to have imposter syndrome in all areas I focus on, but I'm like, it just goes away over the years of experience. That's all it is. And I think the reason why I had imposter syndrome, I wasn't that good at it. I had not, like, nowadays, man, dude, I could open my DMs right now and I probably have 20 guys asking me questions about the patellar tendon. And I probably do, because I haven't actually answered a lot of them recently, but it's like when you've gone through daily, like kind of helping guide people through things through a patellar tendon daily, and you've done it. I mean, I don't know how I've done it for like 2 years now. Back before I had that, I had imposter syndrome. I'm like, why am I going to talk about this thing I don't know enough about? It's like, good. You should have imposter syndrome. Sorry, you still there? But the thing that's difficult. So the thing that's difficult with the pain, like someone who's had patellar tendon pain, when I had it, man, it was like, I think it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. I don't even remember, but it ruined my whole life. Everything, it consumed everything. I had no energy. It just ruined everything. And it is so hard to put myself back in that position, though, because you can say like, I can connect with those people who are going through it, but I actually have no idea what it feels like to go through it. And I think everyone lies about that when they say, oh yeah, I used to be broke and living I know what that feels like. It's like, you don't actually know what that feels like. Cause it's like, if you've ever been heartbroken by a girl, that you don't stop thinking about that for 24 hours of the day. It ruins your life. And now you're going to tell me like, oh, I know what that feels like in your state where you don't think about it a second of the day. It's like the whole nature of that emotion of pain or heartbreak is that it completely consumes you. So if you just say like, oh, I understand what that's like, it's like, you don't really understand what that's like. Because if you understood what that's like, you would still be consumed by it. So it's kind of hard for me to connect to those people. But when I do get them and I see a little bit of my past self in there, my way, just my natural way, I don't know how to be any way else, is I'm just like, dude, you're soft, man. Because I know I was soft. I see myself there and I'm like, you were so soft, man. And you could have really accelerated your progress. I could have accelerated my progress maybe if someone. I just said I don't really listen to people's advice. There are very few people I will listen to people's advice. If they're at a level on something in my life that it far exceeds mine, I'm all ears. But the problem is, I mean, I'm egotistical and think that I always know better than everyone. But when I do meet that person, I just know that they are killing it at this thing. And we also connect. I resonate with this guy because I might have a business guy who's absolutely killing it. And I don't connect at all with his type of business or the way that he runs it. So it's like, your advice is not going to work with me because I don't you kill it with money. I don't run the business just for money. I run the business to put myself out into the world, you know, put the creations that I think are very good into the world. And you're just about money. So it's like, we don't necessarily connect. But yeah, I will listen to people. So I look at these kids and it's like, if they're really asking for advice, I might've been asking for advice as that kid back then. The best thing I could have got is someone being like, bro, you are soft, man. You are soft. Go to the weight room and get on the leg extension. Stop doing your little clamshells and whatever you're doing. Let's get your quad. You got a baby quad. Like it is so noticeable. You got a baby quad. You haven't loaded your knee in ages. Let's just go try loading your knee. If someone would have given me that basic advice and I would have actually listened to them, I would have got better so much faster. It would not have been 3 years. It would have been like, I don't know, a few months. And dude, I went through PT. I went through multiple PTs. And one of them told me like, oh, you think you're going to jump again? I don't know if that's going to happen. You know, like she tells me this is like a 20, I'm like a 20, I think I was a 22-year-old kid. Like you think that I've lost my adaptive abilities with my tendons and I'm not going to jump. Like, what? Are you kidding me? So like I had that, dude, I had that type of influence. And it's like, if I could have just had someone give me more of a template and be like, let's load the sucker, man. Let's try loading the sucker. That would have really helped me. But again, I had to go through 3 years of depression and no energy and misery. I had to go through those 3 years. I had to go through it. There's no way around it. That's the way that fate had decided things to be.
Yeah, it's so true. And to touch on one thing and then probably wrap it up here. The thing that I hate the most about doctors, they're a doctor, so they gotta be so smart, is their terrible blanket advice of like, you'll never do this again. You'll never run again. You'll never, whatever the case may be, because you like, I remember sitting in the doctor's office and I had at the time it was my third knee surgery. And then he's like, you'll never play sports again. And I was just like, what? And like, when you're an athlete, college athlete, like that is your life. That's your identity. That is everything. And it's like, I play sports to this day, right? Is it at a super high level? No. Is it like that I'm out there just crushing everybody? No. But like, am I still playing? Yeah. Am I still doing the things I want to do? Yeah. Can I still squat more than some of my athletes or a lot of my athletes? Yeah. So it's just like, don't tell me I'm never going to do this again. But it's just terrible advice, right? Like, and they just make these blanket statements that are like, my dad had a total knee replacement. They're like, you'll never run again. I'm like, well, why can't he? He has a brand new freaking knee. Like, what's going to happen to that thing? Like, why not? Like, go run on that bad boy. Like, so it's just really interesting. And so that's I'm now very weary when people are like, oh, my doctor said that. I'm like, well, how educated is your doctor? Like, let's have a conversation. And I don't mean like, how educated is he in the terms of like, does he have a PhD or not? I mean, in terms of like, what type of advice did he give you? And like, does that actually make sense? Because there's so much stuff that they say that I think all of us are like, no, like actually do the opposite of what he said, you know? So it just, I have such a personal negative connotation with that. And it's just like, don't, because like what all you're doing is like when they say that, all they're doing is putting limiting beliefs on people. And the number one reason why people don't reach their goals in life is because they have these limiting beliefs. The only way that you overcome these limiting beliefs is actually by doing the thing they told you not to do, right? Like it's very simple. So like, what if we just don't put limiting beliefs on people and just say like, hey, go do what you want to go do? Like, what if you just say, hey, like I would advise you, like if you want to go play sports, you still can, but like just make sure that you do it in a smart manner. Okay, cool. Like,
yeah.
And so like, you'll never do that again.
See, the way I fix that, I just never go to the doctor unless it's like it is a serious. And my mom was a nurse, so whenever I had an ailment as a kid, it was immediately go to the doctor. Whatever it was, man, the smallest thing, go to the doctor. And it's like, I don't know how she's doing. I mean, I respect my mom so much, but I'm like, you have 7 kids, and it's like the smallest ailment. You're driving me 60 minutes to go to the doctor. It's like that's a whole day. This is the whole day you're taking just because I have like asthma, like I don't have an asthma attack, but like I can't breathe a little bit. But I was gonna say the doctor. Oh yeah, I will only go if there's something serious. And I got a deer last year and I was gutting it, and I lacerated my thumb and I lost a ton of blood, and I had to like drive out of the woods, drive myself there. I ended up passing out, getting stitches, and I pissed myself. While I was passed out, and nice. I couldn't. Dude, it was scary, man. It hurts. Like she gave me the lidocaine. It didn't do anything, and put the thing, and I passed out. And then they're like, "How you doing?" And I'm like, "I feel like I'm gonna pass out." And they're like, "Yeah, you just passed out." So, and then they're like, "We need to whatever. They ended up getting it done, but it was this whole thing, and I'm like, I was almost
Yeah.
not even going to go into the doctor, but
Yeah.
my thumb wouldn't stop bleeding, and it's like I was ashamed enough to cut my thumb gutting a deer, anyways. But yeah, I just won't go,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but dude, it's like us sitting. We're not the majority of people. The majority of people, they outsource their intuition
Right.
to a doctor. They outsource their intuition to a doctor. Now there are serious things you got to go to a doctor that you can't intuition out of. But it's like
Of course.
people just want to be told. They just want to be told how to think, And it's like I've never been like that. You've never been
Yeah.
like that. But the majority of people are like that.
Yeah. 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 It's sad. Yeah, it's really sad. And I have nothing against doctors. One of my family's best friends is a doctor. He's a great individual and all that stuff. But I think when they give terrible blanket advice like that, I think we're handicapping people and not actually allowing them to reach their full potential or at least explore. And I think that's an issue. But anyways, Jake, I want to thank you for your time, man. Appreciate your conversation, your thought process. Super excited for where you're going, where you're headed. If you would, I would imagine everybody already knows about you, but if they don't, which would be surprising, where can they find you?
Let's just say my Instagram, Jake Tuura. You can see everything out of there. Jake Tuura, Tuura. If you want to see the in-depth tendons, you want to see nice memes and you want to see testimonials of people getting jacked and getting bouncy and relieving their tendon pains, follow the Instagram and DM me. I might reply.
Yeah. So follow Jake on Instagram. Okay. He's got a lot of stuff. If you want to get jacked, if you have a tendon problem or particular patellar tendon, get his patellar tendon protocol or jumper's knee protocol, excuse me. Okay. It's on his website, Jacked Athlete. Follow him on Instagram. If you want to get jacked, go get hypertrophy clusters. And if you want to jump really high, get vertical jump protocol. Okay. It's pretty simple. Go buy those things from him. Not that he needs you to buy them, but like, his products are fantastic. They're amazing. And his Instagram is really funny because he literally just tells kids almost every day that they're soft and that they just need to train. So it's really funny to see, in all honesty. But guys, if you got anything from this episode, if you got encouraged, if it provoked a thought for you, if you got a laugh, if you got educated, do us a favor, drop a like, drop a comment, drop a subscribe button. If you're on YouTube watching this, drop a comment below for Jake, and then go follow him on Instagram. He puts out some really good stuff, and he's got a book coming out here pretty soon, and I would highly advise you to get that. He's kind of creating waves and is really the first person that's putting this type of information out. So super excited for you. So, Jake, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for the conversation. Look forward to having more with you in the future.
For sure.
But I just want to
had a great time, man.
Awesome. Thanks, man.